this short video, you will be presented with the last way of subsetting vectors, that of using character vectors as selection criterion. Let's see what I mean by that. Sometimes you may need to create a character vector whose members have tags or names attached to them that signify an attribute or feature. For instance, you may have a vector with the first language profiles of some speakers, and you may want to attach the name of the language family that each of the languages belong to. Let's create such a short vector that will serve our purposes and name it L1_profiles. L1_profiles has the names of 8 languages, some of them pretty common in Europe, such as Greek and German, and some others as exotic as the Nigerian Congo languages, Venda and Zulu. For assigning a name to each member of L1_profiles that represents a feature of interest, you may use one of the following 2 ways, depending on what you want to do next. The first way is to use the names function. What this says is that the vector with the language families of each language of L1_profiles on the right of the arrow assignment operator is taking its place as a named vector attached to each member of the L1_profiles vector separately. Let's check now how the resulting vector looks like. As you can see, the vector L1_profiles has the language family name on top of each language. What this means is that the vector is the same as earlier, but now additionally it contains some more information about its members. In other words, the language families of the languages in L1_profiles are considered metadata. Let's move on to the second way of creating a named vector. For that, I will be using the same vector but now stored under the variable name L1_profiles_2 to leave L1_profiles unchanged and work later with that. Now, the second way is to use the setNames function. This function takes the L1_profiles_2 as its first argument and a vector with the names as its second argument, the names being the language family names. setNames outputs a named character vector while it keeps the original vector L1_profiles_2 intact. This means that unlike the names function that attaches the names directly to L1_profiles, with setNames you need to assign the output separately to a new variable. I chose the variable name L1_profiles_named here. As a result, you now have 2 vectors, the initial unnamed vector L1_profiles_2 and the named vector L1_profiles_named. So, if you want to keep both vectors, the unnamed and the named one, you can use the setNames function. Otherwise, if you simply need to create a named character vector out of an unnamed one, use the first way with the names function. So far with creating named character vectors, let's head on to learn how to subset a named character vector. For doing this, I will choose to work with the L1_profiles vector I created earlier, although I could do the exact same things with L1_profiles_named vector. The reason why named character vectors can be useful is that you may subset members of a character vector based on their attached named attribute. In the case of L1_profiles, you may want to subset languages that belong to a specific language family. For doing this, you can use a character vector with language family names within the square brackets operator. For instance, for picking the first Indo-European language, you insert the character vector with the string Indo-European as its member within the square brackets. Notice that such a vector does not return all languages of L1_profiles that belong to the Indo-European language family, but only the first one. The position of the languages in L1_profiles does not play a role. You can subset L1_profiles for other language families without caring about the position the respective languages are placed in L1_profiles. Moreover, you don't have to care about the positions of the members within the subsetting vector. As you can see, in L1_profiles, the Turkic language Turkish is placed after the Japonic language of Okinawan. Okay, As just mentioned, so far the subsetting does not result to all languages of a language family. In other words, the character vector does not function as a selection criterion in the same way a conditional statement does. For doing that, namely for subsetting all Indo-European languages, for instance, you could use the familiar by now conditional operator of equality. As expected, this line of code returns those languages whose name is Indo-European. Let's see what happens under the hood. The equality operator checks whether each of the names of L1_profiles is equal to the string Indo-European. For each comparison, it outputs a true or false value. The result of all comparisons is a logical vector that contains true and false values. The job of the subsetting square bracket operator is to give back those members of L1_profiles that are in the same position with the true values of the logical operators returned by the evaluated relational statement of equality. In other words, it outputs those members whose assigned name is Indo-European. For subsetting both Indo-European and Japonic languages, you can use the logical OR signified by the vertical bar as demonstrated in the previous tutorial. Lastly, you can obtain the same result with the IN operator that you haven't seen until now. The IN operator checks whether each of the members of the vector on its left side belongs to the vector on its right, and returns a logical value for each pair of membership checking. Let's have a look at the returned logical vector. The first false value results from checking whether Niger-Congo belongs to the vector that contains the language families that we would like to select, namely Indo-European and Japonic. The next is true, since the second member of L1_profiles is assigned the name Indo-European that belongs to the vector on the right of the IN operator. Moving one step forward, if you embed the statement within the square brackets, the true values of the returned logical vector become now the selection criteria for the members of L1_profiles. So that's it for now. Don't forget to freeze the video on this slide with the code summary, and as always, if you enjoy this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to also subscribe to the channel by pressing the relevant button on the video or on channel's homepage. And then, in order to get updates when new videos are released, you need to activate the bell notification that stands on channel's homepage.